Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Liana, and today we're talking about the film Moon. This is one of my absolute favorite films, and I have mentioned it several times here on my channel. This is a 2009 film directed by Duncan Jones. He had directed a few short films, one of which is featured on the DVD and Blu-ray, but this is his first feature-length film. It's starring, of course, Sam Rockwell. This is one of his best roles, in my opinion, and I wish he had been nominated for more awards than what he had been, and I'm still salty over that, but at least he got an Oscar this year, so. This film has a runtime of 97 minutes, and it is rated R for some language. You do see a little bit of blood, but it's not violence. Well, if you watch the film, then you know what I mean. As for the plot, it's about a man named Sam Bell who works on the moon to harvest energy and called helium-3, and he sends it back to Lunar Industries on Earth. They're running low on resources. This is set in the near future, obviously. And yeah, so he's been there for close to 3 years, and he's hoping to go back to his wife and his daughter soon. And because he's been up on the moon for so long, he's starting to have hallucinations. He's starting to see things, hear things, as one would after such a long time being isolated. One day he takes one of the harvesters out and he crashes it, and after the crash he wakes up in the infirmary and something happens. So that's all I can tell you without spoiling the plot. If you want the plot spoiled, if you haven't seen the film, obviously I would recommend you do so, but we are going to move forward with spoilers. So I do find this film quite depressing for a number of reasons. And again, if you've seen the film, you'd know why. So let's start by talking about the fact that obviously Sam Bell, the Sam Bells we come to know in the film, because there's more than one, they are clones. They are not the real Sam Bell. Apparently the real Sam Bell, who worked for Lunar Industries, he worked for them for 3 years, and he allowed them to clone his genetic material, and he was given a large sum of money at the end of his 3 years on the moon, so that he could go back to Earth, and he and his family would be well taken care of, and he would never have to work again. So he did carry out a 3-year mission, but that was it. And so he knows about the clones, obviously, and he just doesn't really care. So I don't know for sure how many Sam Bells there were before the ones that we are introduced to. However, it would make sense that there were at least 5. If you consider that each one has a cycle of 3 years, they each have a 3-year mission, and none of them have a memory of their daughter being born or growing up. That's something that they learn along the way. And she appears to be a teenager. She appears to be 14 or 15 years old. So let's say she's 15 years old. That's at least 5 Sam Bells right there. And if you listen very closely at the end of the film, they do make it sound like the Sam Bell returning to Earth is possibly clone 6. In my opinion, it could be more than that, though, because you have to take into consideration the fact that there could have been clones that were awakened who maybe died early and weren't able to fulfill the full 3 years of their mission. So it could be quite a bit more than that at that point. We also don't know if any of the previous Sam Bells became self-aware at any point during those 3 years that they had their mission. It would appear as though they weren't, and that the 2 Sam Bells we know, that they were the first to become self-aware. This means that each and every one of the previous Sam Bells lived out their 3-year-long mission under the assumption that they had a wife and child that they would be returning to. So even though they were getting sick, they all get sick towards the 3-year lifespan. It's almost like an expiry date. So towards that 3-year lifespan, they think, oh, I'm going home. I'm going home to Earth. I'm going home to my wife and my kid. And they're put in a cryogenic protection pod. There's even a playback message as they get into the pod, basically telling them that they'll be put to sleep for 3 days as they make their way back to Earth. And obviously that's not true. That's just one more lie in a series of lies. The film doesn't explicitly state what happens to them, but I'm almost wondering if that is an incinerator of some sort, because after they've completed their 3-year mission and they become very, very sick, they're obviously going to die. And what happens to their bodies? We don't see the dead bodies anywhere. It wouldn't surprise me if they're just disposing of them, right? Because where else would they go? What else would they do? They're useless at that point to Lunar Industries. They have no use for them. So it's possible that they're just speeding up that death process and possibly just burning them entirely. And speaking of there being many lies, many measures have been put in place to ensure that each Sam Bell does not figure out that they are a clone. Most notably and most cruel of which is the fact that they have zero connection to the outside world. Obviously, it's hard enough to be alone anywhere, but obviously alone in outer space. And a lot of people who travel to space, whether you're an astronaut or somebody else, like a physicist, you have some sort of connection and a way to talk to people. They make that happen. And they've done away with that entirely, which would speed up the process of you having those hallucinations and starting to dehumanize. So all of these Sams can receive old pre-recorded messages on a playback loop. And he can also record messages to be sent to others, but obviously they're not going anywhere because remember, these messages are old. So anything that he's receiving and he thinks that he's responding to, they're messages that are years and years and years old. Even his wife obviously is dead now. He can't respond to the dead, which is really quite sad that he thinks that he's recording messages and they're being sent. They're not. What I find so interesting is the fact that each Sam Bell, at least the two that we meet, seems to inhabit a different set of personality traits. And obviously, being that he's cloned from a certain set of DNA, I would imagine that they're different traits that the original Sam Bell would have. Because Sam 1, let's call him, he's the first one that we meet. He seems to be the older, wiser, calmer Sam, and then Sam 2 comes along and he's like the younger, hot-headed, more aggressive Sam. Sam 1 even comments at one point that Sam 2 kind of flies off the handle just the way that Tess, his wife, used to comment that he did, and now he's starting to see through her eyes the way that he used to behave. So they're unique individuals, even though they're cloned from the same strain of DNA. And I'm sure that if we'd met Sam 3, he would have been different in some ways as well. So every clone is awakened in the infirmary under the false pretense of there having been a crash and needing time to recover. Obviously, this is not true. There has not been a crash, except for the actual crash that does happen towards the beginning. But yeah, it's odd that that falls in line with what every other Sam is being told upon awakening. But no, there has not been a crash. This is standard protocol in order for Gertie to give each new clone a series of tests to make sure that their motor skills are functioning properly and things like that. So I'm given to understand that possibly not every Sam passes these tests, or else these tests wouldn't be necessary in the first place. They've all been given the same set of memories from the real Sam's life. They've kind of been pre-uploaded into each Sam Bell. That's why they can remember things from Sam Bell's life as though they had really lived them themselves. And this makes it even more unfair on the Sam Bells that we come to know throughout watching the film. To have these memories that they feel, they feel that they're real experiences. They feel that they've really lived this life, and to suddenly realize that that's not real and they're not the real Sam Bell, it's honestly pretty heartbreaking to watch. There are a few scenes that make this struggle especially difficult to watch, but there's one scene that really sticks out in my mind, and it's when the first Sam 1, as I've nicknamed him, he takes the satellite phone and he tries to call the Bell residence, and his daughter, Sam Bell's daughter, picks up the phone. And they've never spoken of before, obviously, because he's never had contact with the outside world. And so he doesn't realize that Eve has grown up now. She's, about 15 years old. And he's only ever known the fact that his wife had just given birth. She would have been a baby in his mind. And he finds out that his wife Tess is dead. And again, he wouldn't know that. He's not the real Sam Bell. And you can hear in the background the real Sam Bell asking who's on the phone, and our Sam, the Sam we've come to know, he freaks out. He immediately shuts off the phone because he's realizing that that's not my life. That's not his life. Those aren't his memories. That's not his wife, his daughter. Those aren't his memories. And he's so upset. He's already heartbroken at the fact that he found out that Tess is dead. And now he's having to realize that none of that is real for him. But you can still hear him, through his crying, say that he wants to go home. But he doesn't really have a home. The home that he knows isn't his. Which is so sad. So these Sams have absolutely no say in what's been done to them. They're born just to work for 3 years at a time, and then they get sick, and then they die, and then another one is woken up, and it starts all over again. Like Sam 2 says to Gertie near the end of the film, we're not programmed, we're human. They have emotions, they have memories, they have thoughts, they have reactions, they have different hobbies, different personalities, they get sick, they bleed, they die. It sure sounds like I'm describing a human. And yet, if you treated a human this way, you wouldn't get away with it. So why is it okay to treat them this way? It's worth noting that in Duncan Jones's most recent film, Mute, there is a scene in which, in the background at a cafe, there's a trial going on the television. And you can see all of the Sam Bells in the background, plus the original Sam Bell, and it's basically them versus Lunar Industries, and it's gotten a lot of press as titled as Free the 156. So that means there are a total of 156 clones that everybody is aware of. That's probably how many are currently alive. That's a lot. Obviously, that's a lot. And a lot of them have lost their lives, their short lives, doing the work that other humans could have done. It's just laziness not to have trained other people to go up there and do what these clones are being forced to do. And you can imagine that if something like this happened in the real world, what would we be doing about it, Because like I said, these are people. I mean, they're cloned from people, and they are being forced to do things that in any other situation it would be wrong. So it makes you wonder, what would we do if something like this happened in real life? Would we be treating the clones as something different? Would we be giving them basic human rights? And I guess that's basically why I wanted to make this, is because You know, should clones be treated as humans? I know we don't have that situation here yet, but you never know, right? And I think that what the Sam Bells went through was wrong. It was really wrong. That's why I find the film so sad. And I would like to hear your thoughts on this because obviously it's a subject that, like I said, we're not there yet, but we could be someday. Maybe not in my lifetime, maybe not in your lifetime, but someday. And I think we should be prepared to talk about subjects like this because you never know. It's also like when I'm watching films about artificial intelligence, we're not there yet, but I could see it happening. And so I think it's always good to talk about them in advance. Uh, Similarly, when I was watching and reading Never Let Me Go, it's about clones, and they are self-aware. They know that they're clones, and then they know that they have originals out there, and they're being used just for their organs. And after they've given up a certain amount of organs, they expire. And so, again, that's a very sad life. And sometimes that's done with humans as well. People will have children just so that they have an extra organ donor for their sick children, which is wrong, but if it's a clone, it's okay. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting topic and one that I think deserves to be talked about. So yeah, I'm getting long-winded, but you know what I mean. Also, another good show about clones is Orphan Black, which again covers a lot about autonomy, human rights, women's rights, etc. So I'd recommend all three of these if you have the time. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this possibly bizarre discussion. That's just the way I roll. And I hope to see you in my next video. Bye guys.